You know why I'm trying to read more books? Because I need a wider vocabulary so that I don't run out of ways to describe how shocked I am by unprecedented situations that have literally never happened before. I need to I need to keep dredging the depths of the English lexicon to find new and more evocative terms. So let's just skip right to the point on this one. There has been a leak from the White House Situation Room. I know nothing means anything anymore, so maybe for younger people or from people who aren't as aware of what that means, there is an audio recording from the Situation Room. This is the sort of thing that in a normal timeline would have led to people being like, actually disappeared. I'm really not kidding. This is the most secure, this is the place the president and the people around him go to discuss if the decision was made to fire nukes at Moscow, it would have been made in that room. The White House Situation Room. This would be on par with the Nixon tapes 50 years ago. I really cannot think of I cannot think of a proper comparison. But yeah, no, the New York Times has obtained leaked audio recordings of the White House Situation Room where Trump and Rubio were discussing going to war with Iran. This is someone was doing an audio recording in the Situation Room. It is literally like the highest possible level of a security breach. There are only so many people who could be recording this. This is like, according to Axios, Trump aides are worried recordings of Situation Room meetings about Epstein files made their way to New York Times. There are audio recordings of both the Epstein files meeting and the Iran war. It's both? They just have a guy in there. They just have a guy who's painted himself eggshell white so he blends in with the wall. And he's just got a tape on. This is under normal circumstances, treason, death penalty type stuff. Yeah, that's not an exaggeration. Genuinely. Like during wartime, in a historical context, if you read in paper like White House confidant leaked audio from Situation Room, you would not be surprised if they got the chair shortly after. That's not an exaggeration. I'm not trying to be edgy or whatever. It's just that kind of leak.
Times report of a White House freakout over the Epstein files that took place last summer. Vice President J.D. Vance, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, everybody in between was in a series of Situation Room meetings, trying to figure out how to handle the crisis over their boss being in the Epstein files. Well, today we've got new reporting from Axios that they are freaking out about the freakout report and just how that information was leaked. Quote, top White House officials believe New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan obtained audio recordings of Situation Room meetings for their forthcoming book, Regime Change, on which the Epstein...
Oh yeah, naturally it's being concealed for a book reveal. They're doing the Jake Tapper bit with Biden's dementia.
Report is based. Congressman Ro Khanna is Democrat of California. He sponsored the Epstein Files Transparency Act as a member of the Oversight Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, I want to ask you first about one of the bits of reporting in that piece that was about the fact that they had discovered that, contrary to repeated things that Donald Trump had said, that he was never on the plane. That was like a real go-to line of his, going all the way back to 2015. These people were on the plane, I was never on the plane. That in a January 2020 email, a federal prosecutor told a colleague Trump had actually flown on Epstein's private jet, far more than anyone knew. Flight records in the files showed at least 8 trips between 93 and 96, sometimes with his second wife, Marla Maples, sometimes with his children. In January 2024, Trump declared he had never been on the plane. Did you know that when you were sort of pushing for this transparency?
No, I didn't. Even in Watergate, you didn't have the vice president sitting with the attorney general in the Situation Room saying we need to cover this up, that there are documents that could be incriminating for the president.
I think if you sit on that kind of info for financial gain, you're basically complicit. What it tells me is that the leak is probably from somebody in the Republican Party who's looking to sink Trump and elevate Vance. If this has to do with the Epstein files and with Iran, if these are the selective leaks, they're probably trying to time the release of this information to make Trump look really fucking bad in retrospect, but make somebody else, Vance or Rubio, look better in hindsight. That would be my guess. Otherwise, like again, it's a Situation Room leak. It's like a compromise of the highest order. Isn't Vance complicit? I don't think Vance himself would be doing the leaking. It would probably be somebody looking to do it on his behalf, though. That's what I'm saying. Vance's first opinion on the Epstein files was to release them. Exactly. And he was also the biggest opponent of the invasion of Iran. So that's my guess. We're going to get a book release we might not ever hear the audio recordings because the media is complicit. New York Times complicit. New York Times also wants to be on top of the raping America to death pile. They also want to destroy everything. They're the New York Times. But they're probably going to they're doing this in league with the Republican Party to make Vance look better in retrospect, to increase his chances for 2028. Wouldn't this just sink both of them? If there were audio logs showing that Vance was the reasonable actor in the Situation Room, no, that would not sink both of them. Just a guess, though. I don't know.
We have a real problem not releasing these files and then contemplating what they can do to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't lose his base. And, you know, when Massey and I were doing this, we honestly didn't think it would have this kind of political ramifications. I mean, we understood the impact on survivors, but obviously they did, and they were in a panic mode, which neither Massey or I realized.
Is there a comparable situation in the past where info from the Situation Room was leaked? Where audio, like an audio recording from the Situation Room? I don't know if that's happened before. It might have. I haven't looked it up. If that has happened, it is exceedingly rare. No? Okay, people are saying no. Yeah.
The extent of it.
One of the things that comes through in this reporting, again, this is not our reporting, this comes from Haberman and Swan at the Times. They have a book coming out that includes some of this, is that one of the things they're contemplating in those meetings is like how much, literally almost explicitly, how much should we cover up and how much should we disclose? Like the question on the table is, should we actually put this out? And one of the things that makes me think is, look, there are millions of documents that they are holding back, I think, through dubious legal arguments. And given the fact that we know that essentially from this reporting they were contemplating explicitly covering stuff up, it does make you really got to wonder about the stuff they're not disclosing.
Absolutely. And we know what hasn't been disclosed.
Yeah, this has happened before. Haberman did this with the book Confidence Man, The Making of Donald Trump. Excerpt revealing Trump planned to remain in the White House after his November 2020 election loss. A Guardian review of the book describes her as the New York Times Trump whisperer and describes the book as more than 600 pages of context, scoop, and drama. It gives Trump and those close to him plenty of voice and rope. The book debuted at #1 in the New York Times nonfiction bestseller list for the week ending October 2022. Journalists and authors criticized Haberman for allegedly choosing to withhold info on Donald Trump for the sake of her book, despite being aware of it ahead of January 6th. So yeah, these are people who are complicit in the rot and downfall of this country. They have no interest in journalism. They are just there to make money off of insider info trading. That's it. I consider this treasonous behavior, like 100%, literally withholding information critical to national security prior to January 6th so that you could release it for a nice book deal, et cetera, et cetera. Access journalism on steroids. That's the only reason these people have their fucking jobs. Yeah, so they're probably doing this. They're brokering this information in a way that benefits JD Vance. That'd be my guess. So journalists are also an enemy? Yeah, of course. Have you been watching my streams? Basically, like every major journalistic institution in the United States is openly complicit with the White House in the release and cover up of information, in their framing, in what they choose to cover or not cover, in the decisions they make and how to cover the administration. They've repeatedly bent the knee to Trump. They do hate you and they do want you dead. There have been a million pieces on this too, like even journalists openly admitting it. Access journalism. Trump and his cronies are very, very corrupt and very transparent, so it's really easy to get a hold of them, you know? Journalists had a hard time getting a hold of Biden because Biden and his staff were engaged in an active cover-up of his cognitive decay. Trump, on the other hand, is not engaged in any cover-up. His cognitive decay is extremely open and plain for everyone to see. Journalists have no trouble at all getting a hold of him. Journalists are given his personal phone number. There are journalists with his phone number. They just text at him or ask him questions. He's always open. He loves talking about himself, so he's incredibly free to, like, the journalists love him. They give him an infinite supply of information to go after.
How do we know? Because the survivors' lawyers have seen a lot of these files and they've told us. And what is not being disclosed is the survivors' statements to FBI agents naming other men, naming other people who were part of the Epstein files, Epstein abuse. And what also is not being named and disclosed is things concerning Donald Trump. And now we know that there was a concerted effort for months to deal with what needs to be hidden, what should be disclosed, how to trick the American public. And I'm really looking forward to this book coming out because I think it's going to expose everything to the...
Yeah. No doubt. Ro Khanna's a grifter. I don't think Ro Khanna's a grifter. I just think that he's not quite there.
American public.
At least he's anti-pedophilia, which is more that can be said about like basically anyone else in DC.
On that point, CNN had a piece about Epstein fire survivors pushing Comer to investigate potential leads from the DOJ's files in private meetings, and that in a private meeting last week, a group of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse and family members of the late Virginia Giuffre pointed Comer to allegations from the Justice Department's Epstein files to further investigate.
Which needs to be asked.
We talked early in the program about
a report from news website Axios details how top White House officials believe that a pair of New York Times reporters obtained classified audio from meetings in the Situation Room. The Situation Room, of course, is meant to be one of the most secure settings on the planet. Leaked recordings would have big implications for our national security. Maggie Haberman, a longtime critic of the president, and Jonathan Swan allegedly got their hands on the audio recordings and used them for their new book titled Regime Change. The book includes almost verbatim conversations surrounding the war in Iran, and a source within the administration told Axios, quote, "We're afraid some of our most sensitive conversations were being recorded, and we have no idea which ones." Joining me now is New York Congressman Mike Lawler. Congressman, great to see you. Who would be the leaker in this case, or recording these conversations without the knowledge of the president?
I really think that everyone except for Trump is in on this. Maybe Trump and Rubio. The information that they're pulling from here, fuck me. I'm pretty sure I saw this in a New York Times short. The information they're pulling from, but like, you know, strategically withholding for the fucking book release or whatever, is let me see if I can find it, because they talk about this in a way that really does make Vance look good. Like, it seems like the framing from the New York Times is deliberately trying to make Vance look like the most reasonable person in the administration, even though it's complete bullshit. I'll try to find it.
Beats the heck out of me, but obviously it is deeply concerning if anyone was recording conversations in the Situation Room. As a member of Congress, we go into classified settings all the time, especially as chair of the Middle East and North Africa Subcommittee on the Foreign Affairs Committee. These are deeply sensitive conversations, and they most certainly should not be recorded. So, you know, that is something that if they really
Yeah, here we go. I think it was this one.
How did President Trump decide to go to war? I think the story of the last couple of months is just how much Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel was behind President Trump's decision to go to war in Iran. On December 29th, Prime Minister Netanyahu traveled to a military strike on Iran. The Pentagon carries out the largest for military conflict.
No, it wasn't this one. Damn it. I wish I could find it. I did see it. I listened to it while I was driving around. It was talking about the Iran war advisors, like what? Here we go. This is from 2 months ago, which makes me think they've been sitting on this audio, or at least a transcript of it, for a while.
Of all the people on Trump's team, Donald Trump was the most hawkish when it came to Iran.
He decided to go to war on a gut feeling, period, full stop.
We did extensive interviews to find out how he made that decision.
On February 11th, Benjamin Netanyahu pitched the idea of joint Israel-U.S. strikes against Iran.
He lays out a very aggressive campaign to dismantle Iran's weapons systems, and then he also lays out some scenarios for regime change.
President Trump listened to this, and he said, "Sounds good to me."
But what happened next was actually, in some ways, more interesting.
Overnight, U.S. intelligence analysts very quickly went to work.
The head of the CIA uses one word to describe the assessment of Netanyahu's regime change scenarios: farcical.
Within the next few weeks, there were a number of discussions about what might come next. There was not consensus.
These three Trump advisors showed just how varied the opinions were in the administration. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, thought that this was a really good idea.
And it's not a surprise. He was very much chosen for the idea that he believes in flexing U.S. military muscle.
Also, he's literally like a third, like he's an evangelical neo-Nazi who wants to build a third temple. So there's that. Yeah, he's very ideologically aligned with Israel for sure. By the way, I don't think anything they're saying here is dishonest. Well, it's dishonest by implication or by in like selective information that they're providing, but I don't think they're lying.
Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was, I would say, skeptical about a full-scale war, would prefer to continue with a maximum pressure campaign, but was also skeptical that the Iranians would agree to a deal. So he was somewhat ambivalent.
The most actively opposed was Vice President J.D. Vance. He laid out various reasons why this could be complicated, from depleted munitions to the position it would leave the U.S. in going forward.
That it could lead to regional chaos, that it would break apart his coalition. Many of his voters would see that as a betrayal.
On February 26th, President Trump had a final go, no-go meeting with his team in the Situation Room.
Trump is sitting around the table with his inner circle. It's a very small group.
He asked what people thought.
And Vance starts by saying...
This is allegedly what we have audio of, what they're hiding for the book. So I'm thinking the New York Times has been sitting on this information for a little while, and they've been like slow rolling it, but they weren't ready to announce that they had fucking audio recordings from the Situation Room.
Well, you know, I think it's a bad idea, but if you do this, I'll support you.
Pete Hegseth remained where he was, believing that Iran was going to have to be dealt with anyway.
Oh, aren't these the people? These are, aren't they? These two. Hold on. Yeah, Swan and Haberman. Yeah, these are two. These are the two people selling the book. Yeah, these are the two people selling the book. They have the audio at this point, but they're hiding it because they decided, oh shit, we could make a book out of this. We could release it immediately and draw attention to the unbelievable corruption and dysfunction within the White House, or we could betray the American people and make a couple million off of a book sale like months and months after it's too late.
On a gut feel, he asked what people thought.
And Vance starts by saying, well, you know, I think it's a bad idea, but if you do this...
Can you imagine if they had held on to everything involved in the Watergate scandal until months or years afterwards so they could release it in a book? Imagine what American history might look like if every single journalist was as obsessed with holding the bag until they could get a book deal as modern journalists are.
Support you.
Pete Hegseth remained where he was, believing that Iran was going to have to be dealt with anyway, might as well do it now.
And Rubio says, if the goal is regime change, we shouldn't do it. But if the goal is to degrade Iran's capabilities to wage war, their missile program, that's a goal that we can achieve.
At the end, when President Trump wanted to go forward,
almost everyone deferred to the president's gut instincts. They've watched him survive being indicted, being convicted, being shot.
They had seen him beat the odds so many times that it affects how they look at things and what might be doable.
And at 3:38 p.m. the next day, Donald Trump ordered the...
I think what they're doing here is whitewashing J.D. Vance. In my opinion. Hegseth is thrown under the bus, which makes sense. Hegseth will not survive Trump. Hegseth will not have a career in the post-Trump Republican Party. He might be like a Fox guy or whatever. He's not going to persist. Rubio might. J.D. Vance is the Peter Thiel deep state Palantir bitch who is being, like, trying to be the future of the Republican Party. And I feel like the language here really attempts to exonerate him. He was, not only do they say he was the most opposed, they explained reasons why he was opposed. And now with the benefit of hindsight, we can say the reasons he was opposed came out to be true. Regime change wouldn't work, munitions would be depleted, etc., etc. The audio makes him look like the sane voice in the room. And then they're like, well, the only reason J.D. Vance decided to go with it was because he was, because Trump had been right about so many things before. To a Republican voter, what this looks like in retrospect is the time Trump was wrong. J.D. Vance wasn't wrong. He was just swayed by Trump's, up until that point, seeming invulnerability. It's positioning him to be the guy who fixed things. And hey, look at that. He's the guy who's scheduled to go and sign the treaty, the Memorandum of Understanding, in person. I'm just saying, I think that's what they're doing. I think that they are deliberately positioning him. Probably a lot of money moving around to this end. But J.D. Vance doesn't have the juice, though? It doesn't matter. They're still going to try. Like, the Republican Party needs to prepare for a post-Trump Republican Party. It's not like once Trump is out, every single Republican is going to be okay with being permanently out of power. They want to hold power. They're going to try. And this is them trying. Knowing Maggie Haberman, I don't think she would go for Vance. Maggie Haberman is a fucking scum piece of shit who will do anything she is paid to do. She literally withheld information that the president had plans to seize power, even without the vote, before J6 and sat on it because she wanted to release a book. She has already prioritized money over the future of the fucking republic. She will do or say anything she is told to do for money. Her political opinions are irrelevant. Could they deliberately leak it to whitewash fans? That's what I'm saying.